Would you classify Ole Miss's 2024 season as disappointing?
Yeah. Yeah, that team was talented enough to win the title, and they didn't even make the playoffs. I think that has to be a disappointment.
And I'm honestly looking at this team, and I'm like, I think this is like a solid team, but their over win total's 8.5, right? You're asking to get to 9 wins, and I think they took significant step backs at most of their position groups. And I know that they replenished a lot in the portal, but I don't think it's necessarily when you play this transfer portal roulette, and you don't have the transfer portal class that you did last year. It's going to be tough to replicate the production that you had at some of those spots. You lose guys like Jackson Dart, you lose Walter Nolan, you lose Trey Harris, you lose Jordan Watkins, you lose Trey Amos. I mean, you lose Chris Paul. I mean, there were really good players in that team last year, and I don't know if you replaced some of them, and hopefully in the aggregate in the wide receiver room, like what you got in the portal seems to be pretty solid. At the linebacker spot, you should be okay. D line, you should be okay. But like there's some step backs, I think, from a lot of these positions. And if you're asking Ole Miss to be competing at the highest level against teams like LSU that seem to be taking a step forward, Georgia, Oklahoma seems to be taking a step forward, Florida seems to be taking a big step forward. It may be difficult to compete at the top end in the SEC there for these guys, but I guess let's talk about it because the significant changes definitely come on the offensive side of the football at the quarterback position because you got a guy like Austin Simmons coming in, super young. Is he what he'll be a true sophomore and he'll be like maybe 18 years old because he reclassified? Maybe he's 17. I don't know what it'll
He's
be, but
19. He's 19,
19?
but still the youngest third-year guy in the country.
Yeah, that's nuts. And look, in the times that he played, he looked pretty dang good. And I think Ole Miss is very high on him, and I think they were very happy to get him. I'm pretty sure he's from the state of Florida. Like, they were really happy to get him. But I think he could be really good, right? So I'm not super worried about the quarterback position, although Jackson Dart was a first round quarterback, most your all time passing leader, for an Ole Miss Rebel. I mean, he was phenomenal for as a quarterback for Ole Miss all those years. But I'm not super worried about that spot. Now, if he goes down, what do you have if he goes down? A whole lot of not great to unproven, right?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. You did bring in uh, Trinidad Chambliss, right, from Ferris State, D2 national title winner. That's a lot of fun there. But yeah, I think not only are you going to have a downgrade, I think, which is like just what's going to happen when you lose like a 3-year starter and a first round pick at quarterback, Jackson Dart to Austin Simmons. Is Simmons going to be better than Dart when he was his first year in this system playing Kiffin? Probably, right? And I think it's also pretty helpful because if you remember that Jackson Dart, like it was more of a quarterback competition, right, for a couple years before he really took a hold of the job. And then here's Austin Simmons, and it's been like for a couple years now, it's like you got to get ready for this year because it's going to be your job when Dart leaves. So I think that kind of mindset helps, no doubt. But yeah, that's a lot of fun for Ole Miss fans. I know they're excited about him, but there's going to be a downgrade. Like I think that's just what's going to happen. I think he's still going to be a really good quarterback at some point in his career. We'll see how early that is. We'll see if he gets help with the O-line, with the running backs room. We think that the wide receiver room should be in a good spot, but you got a lot of new faces, players to replace, and all that stuff. But I think you trust Lane Kiffin's valuation at the quarterback spot with the talent Austin Simmons has and the stuff he's proven. That Georgia drive was just unbelievably impressive, what he did to kind of manufacture that and keep their momentum going in that game. And yeah, helping them get a win there. But yeah, Austin Simmons will be fun player to watch out for in the SEC.
Yeah, I would project him to probably be a top half quarterback in the SEC. And I know that seems like a lot to project, but yeah, that's the kind of talent we're talking about. In the skill positions, speaking of players surrounding Austin Simmons, running back spot, you bring in Damian Taylor from Troy, who was pretty solid, 1,000 yards. You bring in Kawan Lacey from Missouri, who highly rated recruit like a year ago. This could be an interesting group. I would expect these guys with Logan Diggs to kind of all get their share of carries. I mean, you're not going to have a Quinshon Judkins in this backfield, but I think in the aggregate, like you probably have a better running back room than you did last year, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's solid. I don't know if any of those guys really gets me excited, in this room. But I think it's the nice part is you do have three guys that I think you feel pretty comfortable trotting out there, and the talent's there as well. But yeah, in terms of being like a star-studded group in the SEC, not necessarily this group, but it'll be fine, very serviceable. And also, Kiffin likes to run the football too, so you have multiple guys, keep him fresh, all that good stuff. That'll be good things for Ole Miss.
And in the wide receiver room, I mean, I mean, you lose Trey Harris and you lose Jordan Watkins, but I still like these guys that they got. Dejon Stribling from Oklahoma State, fantastic wide receiver. Not to mention you get back Caden Lee, who had 800 yards for you and was incredible when Trey Harris was battling injuries. Trey Wallace from Penn State was a really good wide receiver, particularly early in the season. Uh, I don't hate Deuce Alexander. I like Traylon Ray from West Virginia. Like those top three guys, I think are definitely the alphas in that room. But beyond, those three, I think Deuce Alexander, Traylon Ray. Not sure that Devin Price or maybe we'll see Caleb Cunningham come out in this spot as well. We'll see his coming out party. See like what Ole Miss is going to want to do with him. Winston Watkins, I think, is pretty good as well. They brought in a ton of true freshman wide receivers, so it'll be interesting to see if some of those guys see the field and like what guys are going to stick. And but I think those top three guys are pretty solidified in Stribling, Lee, and Trey Wallace.
Yeah, yeah, and hopefully you get some production from Deuce Alexander. He was a young kid that produced for Wake Forest last year. I'm interested to also see. I know you're battling some injuries, like some guys have been dinged up. Doesn't sound like anything serious or stuff that should linger into the season, but something I wanted to bring up. And then Caleb Cunningham. I know he's been a little bit dinged up too, but he is your headliner in this class, right? 5-star kid. And obviously the talent is there. 6'3" kind of gives you a body like that in that room, which is a lot of fun. We've seen Lane Kiffin not be afraid to use freshmen. If they are talented and ready to play in the SEC, we'll see how quickly he can get adjusted and continue to grow during fall camp, and hopefully be a part of this offense and be kind of a special talent that they have in that room to add to some of the transfer portal guys that they brought in, along with Caden Lee obviously returning.
And tight end spot, pre-scoring goes to the NFL, and if you remember him from 2023, you're like, oh my gosh, what a big loss. But Daquan Wright, he caught 27 balls last year from the tight end spot. Like, he's a good player. Not to mention they brought in three transfers. Luke Haas from Arkansas. I know he's dealing with some stuff. He might not play for a lot of the season. If I'm right with my information there, but Caleb Odom from Alabama seems interesting. Trace Bruckler from New Mexico is interesting. So I think you got plenty of guys there. And Daquan Wright, I think, is a guy that people maybe don't know about that are probably going to start hearing about a lot in the coming season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even, losing most rooms, you lose a guy like Prescorn and you get concerned. But yeah, I'm with you there. Wright's a very solid dude. He's also big enough to be a pretty darn good blocker, right? We'll see how quickly they can beef up Caleb Odom. I think it's nice that he can play a spot where play a role where it doesn't have to be like your every down, hand in the dirt kind of guy. He can just be a really nice piece. And kind of work in a couple tight end sets or on third downs for you and kind of give you different looks. And yeah, 6'5". I mean, he's just a really freaking good athlete, no doubt. No, there's a good reason why Ole Miss went after him pretty hard to get him coming from Alabama. So it's a fun room. It sucks that Haas got hurt because he at one point was one of the rising stars in the SEC at the tight end position, but we'll see if he gets back with his lower leg injury. Hopefully sooner rather than later, and can be contributing, because that could be a really fun group if you got Wright coming along with Haas healthy, and then obviously Caleb Odom sprinkling in when you need him. That's an awesome group for Lane Kiffin, and of course Austin Simmons to take advantage of.
Yeah, I'll move over to the offensive line, and it wasn't like a great unit by any means last year. I think we were expecting it to be a little bit better than it was, and you bring in some transfers here, and people are expecting this offensive line to be better than it was last year. And I am a little bit more skeptical, right? You get Diego Pounds back at your tackle spot, but you're bringing in Patrick Kutas from Arkansas. I think he's pretty good. Percy Lewis at least has experience. Not sure that he's fantastic, but he's got the size for sure and the athleticism. I think he could, take another step for sure with this offense. Townsend from UAB, PJ Wilkins from Charlotte. I mean, Bryson Sanders. I think this could be pretty good. I just don't know if this is as good as maybe people are anticipating. Not to mention, I don't know that I feel great about what's behind, these 6 or 7 guys that I mentioned. Like, if injuries start occurring, like, what are they going to do?
Yeah, and I think the other thing too of note is Austin Simmons is a lefty too. So like your returning guy, typically the most important position, right, is your left tackle. Would be Diego Pounds, the guy that you feel comfortable bringing back, former high recruit, right? But your right tackle, that's your position of almost concern. You got a couple transfers, you got some guys fighting out for that. That's going to be a spot that you're kind of curious about because Simmons is a lefty. So that right tackle becomes your blind side and becomes an uber important spot. We'll see. I like a couple of these guys. I don't love any of them. I think it can be okay. I think you can piece together 6 to 7 guys and put together an offensive line that's serviceable. Is it going to be one that's elite, going to be leading the charge here, elevating the rest of your offense? I would be surprised. We've seen more drastic things happen, but if offensive line is a question mark for you this late in fall camp, I think that's concerning. And obviously they hit the portal hard for a lot of these guys, but we'll see. We'll see. But then again, like, you're not really going to be tested like crazy until you get to LSU. I think it would, like, in terms of the elite defensive lines that you're going to see. So hopefully you have some time to gel and get guys ready. So when you do get into the back half of your stretch, you are ready to play against some pretty darn good fronts you'll see. So obviously a position of importance, obviously a position we'll be watching in September to make sure that they're, ready to go for SEC play.
And maybe I'm underrating Percy Lewis a little bit, but if he's going to play right tackle, I mean, he's played 1 snap of college football at right tackle. I mean, is it a big deal that it'll be his first time playing right tackle if he ends up being the guy at right tackle?
Like I said, it's an important spot. PJ Wilkins is also kind of battling there. Jaden Williams is also battling there. So I think in that scenario, it's not that that they don't have anyone good enough to play right tackle. I just think they're waiting for guys to separate, but also you want to start working with continuity and working with the offensive line, letting them gel. If you're still having competitions this late, it's something that I think is definitely something of note. But yeah.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. I don't know what the starting 5 is going to look like here, but maybe they have enough. Maybe they figure it out. I'll say this, in terms of their schedule, I think they have a couple weeks to figure that out. I think Georgia State, Kentucky, even Arkansas at home. I think Arkansas is a little bit scary, but they're also kind of breaking in a lot of new pieces on the offensive line. So, and Tulane, like, it isn't until week 5 that you're playing as LSU.
Yeah.
So if you have something figured out by then you might be in a pretty good spot there. But moving on to the defensive side of the ball, I mean, how are we feeling? I mean, your 3 best players on this side of the ball, in my opinion. I mean, people may have different opinions. The 3 best players from last year are gone. So what are you doing in this front 7? I think the defensive line has depth. I think it's kind of a position that they've sneakily recruited really well at. I think the linebacker spots are right, but Chris Paul and Walter Nolan are not small losses. They're not.
No, No, Princely Uman Jared Ivey, JJ Pigas, like guys that were really, really good for you, made you an elite defensive line, which made you an elite team last year. Guys are gone. I know they're bringing over some former highly rated recruits, guys that have produced at times in their career or flashed with Prince Well, Uman and obviously Deshaun Womack coming in from LSU. You supplement that with returns of, Cam Franklin, Jamarius Brown, Xavier Harris, guys like that. Obviously, what Perkins gives you, also rushing the passer, and what he could do coming off, is impressive, right, to say the least. So we'll see how Pete Golding decides to rotate this D line. I have to assume there's going to be a drop off because you don't lose like legit first and second round talents like that just and be able to be fine, at Ole Miss. So it'll be interesting to watch. I think there's names, there's talent for sure, but I don't think you're going to just take over games like you did against Georgia, right? Or you did in certain spots last year. So definitely one that's going to be intriguing. Going to be tough though.
Yeah, linebacker spots. I like Perkins. I like Daughtery. You're bringing in a couple transfers that could be pretty good. Jaden Yates from Marshall. Who knows? But I think Chris Paul getting him from Arkansas, like you saw how good he was. Like at his best, Chris Paul was an NFL talent linebacker. Um, and I think playing behind that defensive line also helped that group a lot. I mean, so I think the front seven will still be fine. It just won't be as good as last year. I mean they led the country in sacks. They led the country in pressures. They were one of the best teams against the run in the entire country. Like this front seven last year was unbelievable. It was so good. It's the best front seven that we've probably seen Ole Miss ever have. In the aggregate. So coming back from that, it's gonna look a little bit different. I'm still confident that it'll be all right. But then if you don't have as dominant a front seven as you did last year, and then now you turn to the secondary and you're like, what is going on here? What is going on here? Last year you brought in a ton of really talented transfer portal members, and they were okay. They're fine. A lot of the Ole Miss is people were having to keep up with Ole Miss a lot. The defense was on the field a lot. Like you were going to give up yards, right? Uh, but man, Sage Ryan, is he going to be starting for you? Jalen Braxton, I think he's pretty good if he's healthy. Antonio Kites coming over. I mean, what are we looking at in the secondary? Because I don't feel great about it.
Yeah, you're missing a lot of guys, right? So obviously Trey Washington, Trey Amos, Ian Banks, John Sanders, just to name a couple that are going to be Kennedy, right? Jadon Kennedy, guys that just were big pieces for you. You talked about the portal roulette that's going on. So you have a bunch of players heading out the door, but you can supplement with some talented pieces. I think I see a lot of names. I see Sage Ryan, Antonio Kite, guys that have, pretty good recruiting profiles. Sage Ryan at least has played a lot of football at LSU. Did he ever play elite football? Did he ever play great football? I don't think so. Yeah, man, I do worry. I do worry for this group. It's going to be tough, especially if you are not getting to the passer like you did last year. You talked about you can get exposed for sure. Now, the good news is, like we talked about with the O-line, with the way the schedule shakes out, in terms of legit passing threats that scare you, you're not until LSU. So you have time to work the kinks out and hopefully do some self-scouting in early September to figure out what you need to do. Hopefully see some development and guys get more comfortable in their roles. But it's one that's going to be tough. I think you also hit it out of the park with Trey Amos, right? A guy that was a reserve or the third string guy for Alabama, and he came in and was one of the best corners in the SEC last year. I don't know if I see that in this portal class. I would love to be surprised. I think Ole Miss fans would love for me to be wrong there, but it's one that's concerning without a doubt. And I think in the SEC too. I know the quarterback rooms in the SEC isn't what maybe it typically has been in the past couple years, or really since before last year. But I do think, even so, I think it could be a spot that you do get exposed. And if you're talking about this team not hitting their potential, not hitting their ceiling, which we'll talk about with our win total projections, it could be because of this room. It absolutely very well could be because of this room.
Yeah, I think special teams will be fine. Not super worried about what they got going on there. I mean, I don't really know what they have at punter, but uh, they should be okay there. I mean, you do lose a good punter and a good kicker, but it's fine. In terms of their schedule, 8.5 wins for me is a lot to get to. 9 wins is a lot to get to me, right? Uh, you're out of conference. You should go 4-0. All right, Georgia State, Tulane, Citadel, and Washington State. You should be 4-0, right? So how do you find 5 more wins in this SEC schedule? You can probably find one with Mississippi State. I don't know. You got to go on the road there. Egg Bowl. Never know what can happen there. You're probably circling Arkansas, Kentucky, definitely. But you did lose to Kentucky last year. But I would be confident in those 3 games, right? So where are you going to find these other 2 wins between LSU, Georgia, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Florida? I think South Carolina at home. I think that they can definitely win that game. I have a tough time believing they'll beat Florida and Georgia and LSU. It's going to be interesting. I think they could get there. I'll lean slightly to the under. Not a bet for me at all, but I think 8-4 is the most likely scenario with this Ole Miss team. And in terms of like the historical aspect of Ole Miss, like that's a pretty good season, and having to replace what you have to replace from last year as a team like Ole Miss, if you were able to do it somewhat comparably, I think that's a great job done by Lane Kiffin. So he's been a really nice coach for them. He's taken them to heights almost never seen before with Ole Miss, and I'm excited to see what they do in 2025, and then how that will affect how Ole Miss moves along in 2026 and 2027. But yeah, I'll be a slight lean to the under here at 8.5.
Yeah, I'll be with you there too. I just think I see too many teams on the schedule, the way the schedule shakes out, like in terms of the dynamics of it, with when you get certain teams. I circle October 25th and November 1st. You mentioned Oklahoma and South Carolina as 2 of those games that you're gonna have to win to get to your win total. And that's like at the after Georgia, like that'll be, you'll probably be getting pretty tired by then. So, and then you also have Florida at the end of that stretch too. So you go from your bye week is first week in October, and then you don't have a bye week until the end of November. So like that'll be a brutal, brutal long stretch. Obviously you get the Citadel before Florida. So that's like, it's a nice break, I guess, if you want to call it cupcake, right? For SEC and for Big Ten. Keeps crapping on the SEC schedule, but it's just kind of tough how some of the way that shakes out. And also too, like you beat Georgia last year. You don't think Georgia's going to be fired up to play that game with how it shook out last year? What happened in Oxford last year? You have to go to Athens to Georgia this year. So yeah, it's one that's obviously it's going to be tough. I think 8-4 is a very solid season. Obviously, with some of the guys you're bringing in, and with the fact that it is Ole Miss and the success you had last season, you want and you expect better. But I also look around this roster and I see, honestly, a team that's almost building for next year. I think the year after, I think you could see like this team really start to stick out, especially if they do return a lot of those underclassmen that do still have eligibility and really can take that next step. That's what I worry about. Like some of these teams are going to be playing Oklahoma, Georgia, Florida, Arkansas, very, very veteran, LSU, very old veteran teams. This Ole Miss team is actually a little bit younger, which is very exciting, right, for the future, but also for the present here, could be something that does cost them in a game or two. So yeah, I'll be on the under 8.5, but yeah.